Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube and podcast channel. We are back with another match preview after the heroics last weekend at the Stadium of Light, or should we call it St. James's Park at the Stadium of Light after that black and white display in that north stand. We turn our attention back to the Premier League, back to Manchester City. I'm Scott. I am your host for this one. And this week, I am joined by Joe, Andy, and Daryl. Joe, mate,
Evening.
how are you?
I'm fantastic. Yeah, I'm doing really well. It was nice to get Saturday out of the way, and I think it's going to do our lads a hell of a lot of good getting that comfortable training session done for the big boys at the weekend. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm doing good, thank you.
Andy, you were obviously there, and so were you, Daryl. But we'll talk to Andy first, and we'll come to you after Daryl. Have you recovered? Did you get your 4 free beers and your free, what was it, sausage roll or whatever from the Wi-Fi going down?
I didn't find out about the free beers till after I was on the bus home. I was raging about that. I thought it was very nice of them to say congratulations on your derby win. Here's some free drinks.
Bit of champagne.
We were going to call it the Stadium of Light Work again, but St James's Park at the Stadium of Light Works as well. But I could agree with everything that's been said there. We needed the win. Just the nice, easy task of Man City now.
Yes, nice, easy one. And Daryl, mate, how have you been?
I absolutely fine, mate. Just like the lads have said, just pleased to get that one out of the way. It took, I think it probably took until about midday on Monday for me voice to get back to normal from doing all that shouting in the away end. Gallowgate on weir is what I would like to call it. And yeah, it's just like I say, can't fault the lads for the performance. You know, they did really well. They didn't have to step out the first gear because Sunderland didn't really offer anything. And here we are going into a game against Man City with a nice little boost in our back pockets. Amongst the plethora of Sunderland attackers, might I add.
Absolutely. And we will we will turn our attention to the Man City preview in just a moment. But before I do that, here's a little word from our sponsor. The GallowgateShots match preview is brought to you by Magpin. Magpin are the go-to site for high-quality, unofficial enamel pin badges of Newcastle United players, legends and retro kits. For more information, visit their website at magpinbadges.bigcartel.com. Yes, that is our sponsor, as always. And there's Joe with his 2 Adidas training Magpin tops. Maybe they'll release some new ones when the new Adidas gear comes out. Who knows? But like I've said before, Man City is the game. It is Saturday, the 13th of January, 5:30 kickoff under the lights at St. James's Park. And it's live on TNT Sports, or BT Sports, if you still will call it that. Joe, mate, it's been 1 win, 1 defeat so far this season against Man City. Obviously, once in the league, once in the cup. 1-0 victories and 1-0 defeats. Given off the result we had at the weekend, and obviously you can't really take much into that because it was a lower league team. But what are your confidence levels going into this City game?
Well, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because it's Man City. And yeah, you're right. We have beat them. It was in the League Cup. They weren't playing the full strength team, but neither were we. So it was a difficult one to judge. Yeah, we couldn't really. We played our best team that we had available, which was not a lot. Now, obviously, we know the likes of De Bruyne is back for the weekend. Haaland's maybe back, touch and go. At the very least, he'll probably be coming off the bench. But having said that, it's going to be encouraging to see what the lads do after a good few training sessions in the bank. We know how difficult December was with the amount of fixtures that we had, the quick turnaround. We didn't really get a chance to do much on the training ground and fully prepare for games like we did last season. And needless to say, everyone knows we saw the effects that had on the players, on the injuries, on the style of play that Eddie was trying to put onto the players, and it just wasn't working. Now, we're coming at the end of that, I think, and what I'm expecting to see is a massive step up in levels in not just, I suppose, not just like the the kind of performances we put in, but like just the general things like the stamina, the fitness, the sharpness to play the right pass at the right time, not making uncharacteristic errors that, you know, we've seen some fantastic players like Trippier make over the last few weeks. So I'm expecting to see a bit more of that now. Having said all that, I'm not expecting a win, spoiler alert, but I do expect to see us put in a performance that is more like the Eddie Howe side that we saw last season and at the start of this season. Granted, we did lose to City away at the Etihad earlier this season, but again, they're a massive side. They're a huge side that's going to be really difficult to break down. They went undefeated last year at the Etihad, so you weren't expecting anything from that. So it's one of those. It's a difficult one. The fixture in isolation, I'm not expecting much, but I'm expecting a big improvement in performance. And I think the lads will probably say the same.
Yeah, well, City currently obviously in third position on 40 points, so they're not going to get relegated this season. That's 12 wins, 4 draws, and 3 defeats. They have only won 3 of the last 5, and Andy, they've not been maybe it's the Man City of what we're used to. They've dropped the ball a couple of times this season, and they've had a few draws, and you know they just haven't been to that same level we have. And I think, as Joe's mentioned, obviously Kevin De Bruyne not being in the squad has hurt them quite a lot. But he is back, so you know, yay! But, you know, is there any other players that have been standing out for you? You know, this season for City who maybe stepped into Kevin De Bruyne's position, and obviously huge boots to fill. I don't think anybody could set those levels, but at least tried to get to that level.
Yeah, well, De Bruyne, I was one of the idiots that put him in my fantasy team for week 1, and then I saw him hobble off after 30 minutes. So I'm looking forward to him coming back. I saw he's got a new Barnet as well. He's looking a bit like he's got sort of the longer blonde locks now, hasn't he? So I don't know whether that means he's going to be. Yeah, I don't know whether this is going to be like when Fernando Torres like changed his hair then became terrible. So that's my only hope for De Bruyne. But
what a fall from grace that would be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, with your first point about Man City generally, I wouldn't say they're really having an off season because they do this every year where they start just okay and then they just win the last like 20 games of the season. It's ridiculous. So they are third in the league. They've only lost 3. The games they've lost, Wolves, Arsenal, Villa, not horrific ones. I guess Wolves is the only real banana skin there. And then they've drawn against Chelsea, Liverpool and Palace. So again, Palace is probably the only proper banana skin. They're just being victims of their own success, really, because they've set such a high level, aiming for 100 points every year, aiming for treble seasons every year. We've just become accustomed to them being ridiculous, and they've just not been quite as ridiculous this year. In terms of your second point about De Bruyne, I think Foden has been the key man for them. He's been so versatile in all the positions he's played. He was probably their best player in that return leg at the Etihad at the start of the season. Plays out on the right, goes is the number 10, does the sort of false 9 when Haaland's not around, links really well with Julian Alvarez. He's one of these players who still probably hasn't found the level that we all wanted him to, like in terms of putting an England shirt on, but still is unbelievable and one of the most talented players in the league. So I'm very worried about him, very worried about their pace and power in midfield. I'm hoping they play Grealish rather than Doku because Doku's been absolutely sensational as well. It's like taking Grealish and adding to all of the weak parts of his game and just making an absolute machine. So going back to what Joe said, yes, we should be lifted, but Man City, we cannot forget that they are still one of the best teams in the world. Yeah. And you also have to remember we're after their 5th choice centre midfielder desperately, which says everything about the levels that we're still at between the two of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Daryl, I think midfield is probably where this game's going to pivot on quite heavily. Obviously, you know, we've maybe not been to the levels we would expect in the midfield, and a lot is down to personnel, you know, either not being fully fit or just playing too many games. And, you know, Man City, they kind of like to play that ball through the middle as well. So, you know, are we expecting a midfield battle between the two sides?
Absolutely. I think that the key problem that we're going to have is the fact that we know that Joe Linton's not going to be featuring in the game on Saturday. He's going to be a big miss. He was such a huge asset to our midfield against Sunderland last weekend. And we know how much we'll miss him come Saturday night. You know, one of the weaknesses of our game in recent weeks has been the ability of the opposition team to effectively just pass the ball straight through the middle. So I'm hoping that when they've been on the training ground this week, they've been working on that defensive solidity of the midfield, and working together as a unit, so that when we do break forward, we don't all like that midfield three. Not all of them all break forward at the same time. And as much as it gives us an advantage of flooding the opposition half, we need that defensive rigidity of having somebody sitting, helping to break up play should we get counted on. I think at the minute the responsibility of that falls on Bruno. As much as we love Bruno going forward and seeing him in that final third, pinging balls around and trying to carve teams, we need that solidity against a team like Man City, because we know that they will hurt us. And I have to give special praise. Andy mentioned Phil Foden there. I think the player for me this season for Man City, as he has been for a little while now, has been Ruben Diaz in the middle of that midfield, because I think he's probably the best central defensive midfielder on the planet, and probably the best really since you had Sergio Busquets at his peak for Spain.
Do you mean Rodri?
For Barcelona. Sorry, yes, I do mean Rodri.
I was thinking that. I was like,
not Ruben Diaz, Rodri.
I was thinking, that's like some tactical genius from Daryl putting Ruben Diaz in midfield.
Well, absolutely.
I knew who
Rodri.
you meant.
Absolutely.
That's what
no, he's unreal.
He's just on a different planet altogether. And I suppose really when you think about Ruben Diaz and the other central defenders, they can also step up into that position as well. And we've seen that recently as the new evolution of what Man City bring to the table is a defender will step out into midfield, whether it's Ruben Diaz, whether it's John Stones, who I think might not be featuring. I think he got injured again recently, didn't he? And even Kyle Walker has done it at times, but I think Kyle Walker is now one of the ones that actually sits back in the back line, and it's one of the centre halves or even the left back will come into midfield and will try and cause damage there. And it is going to be such a key battle, and it's going to require whoever Eddie picks in midfield, and we can probably assume now that it'll be Bruno, Longstaff and Miley, that they need to be on the ball. And like we said, this week, having all that time on the training ground this week is going to prove invaluable in terms of retaining shape and discipline.
Absolutely. And we are, as always, recording this before the press conferences. So when it comes to players injured, that sort of stuff, we can only really go off what we've been told either in the post-match interviews or even before then. So, Joe, I mean, you look at City, they do have Kevin De Bruyne back. Haaland's probably touch and go, like you say, they're probably gonna feature off the bench. I wouldn't have thought he would start, although if I'm being honest, hasn't really done much against us. I think he was in Jamal Lascelles' pocket for a lot of the game last season. Although he did score, of course. But
nothing.
Yeah, well, he probably isn't going to play. He's not going to start, at least. I hope not for FPL's sake. Let's not get no Haaland captains again. But looking at Newcastle, Joe Linton's going to be a miss. Callum Wilson still probably going to be away, and I don't think there's any other new injuries that we're aware of. I think we came out of the Sunderland game pretty much unscathed. Obviously, that's always good news, Joe, when you come out of a game and there's no new setbacks.
Well, yeah, I think every day this 2-week break is looking at more and more appealing from Newcastle side of things. Obviously, Joe Linton went off. They're not expecting it to be too serious. So hopefully it's just the City game that he's missing and that he's back for Villa. We do have the FA Cup tie against Fulham as well at the end of the month. So we really need those players back. Yeah, it's a strange one because we've obviously suffered from a lot of injuries leading up to this. And we've had a few players like Byrne and Botman come back into the fold. And then it's kind of stagnated a little bit. And we're getting those players back up to fitness. And I think we then forget that we've got like a backlog of players, the likes of, Barnes, Willock, Callum Wilson, whenever he's back, Murphy, all these lot to come back into the fold and to make a difference and to provide a plan B as well, because we've not really had that. Like, it's all fine and well changing bodies around, but one thing that we forget is a lot of the players that are missing are those that will provide that kind of difference late into the game, change things up tactically. So yeah, we have missed it, but yeah, it's good that we're getting these players back and they're not immediately coming straight off like they were in November, December time. I think this, whilst it is going to be a really difficult game, we get out of this unscathed. We get back on the training ground, let the lads who are get back with fitness sort themselves out, and I'm anticipating from February onwards we're going to look a lot sharper and have a lot more depth in the squad. So yeah, it's good that we didn't have too much of an injury concern. after Sunderland, like especially when we know how physical those games can get.
Didn't Luke O'Nien break Lewis Miley's leg? I thought that's what happened with that tackle. The way they were going on about it.
I mean, you would have.
Didn't he really hurt Lewis Miley?
Yeah,
I totally forgot Joe Linton went off in that game. If I'm being honest with you, I totally forgot it was a Sunderland game that Joe Linton went off.
Immediately after we scored the second goal.
That's fine. Well, he didn't.
He just straight off, get down the tunnel.
Right.
Yeah, because Eddie Howe knew that tackle was coming in. You see, so he knew that if he took off Joe Linton and bring on Lewis Miley, that Miley's got rubber bones because he's only 17, so he'll be fine. Andy, mate, when it comes to the Newcastle side, it's getting back to what we had last season, where it's kind of back to the standard 11. Obviously, there are some players still missing, but you think of the back line, it kind of picks itself. I think again, the one position where everyone has their opinion on, and I'm going to ask you for yours, is do you play Dan Burn or do you play Tino Livramento in the left back position? Because it's going to be coming up against some pretty quick opposition at the weekend. What would you do if you were Eddie Howe?
I'm still just thinking of Rubber Bones. I'm picturing Gilderoy Lockhart in Chamber of Secrets when he is that with Harry Zab? Difficult one because with Dan Burn in particular, I don't really know where I stand on him, because when I watch the games, he's a really easy person to criticise, but I think at the same time he is worth criticising because he is such a glaring weakness at times in terms of his pace and how quickly he can get turned. And I think the left-hand side of the defence in particular has looked pretty weak over the past sort of weeks. I think Botman, as Joe maybe alluded to there, maybe isn't quite at the sharpness yet. So you've basically got two pretty slow left-footed lads on that side, not being able to do an awful lot. And I think the Liverpool game really showed how weak we can be if there's a bit of a crack. So it's nice to have the option. I personally am hoping that we get back to how it was last year when we had that set back four, and then obviously five when Pope's back. So I wouldn't be against Howe sticking with Burn. I do know that at Bournemouth, one of the things they criticised of Howe was that he had favourites, and he very rarely liked to sort of switch things up when he had his favourites. I mean, we've seen how good Livramento is. He has maybe just dropped off that peak a little bit, because when he first came into the team, he looked absolutely unreal. Ironically, it was those games against Man City, and then we played Man United as well in the Cups, where he just looked absolutely unreal. I personally would still play Burn because we've kept a clean sheet in a really big game. Defence should hopefully be a bit more confident. I'd stick him back in there. I think we just need to make sure that we've got that extra cover, because as we've mentioned, Joe Linton on that left-hand side, he's basically like two players, because he can cover the left back. Well, three players, covers the left back, covers the midfield, and also sets up goals via the boot of Dan Ballard. So who knows? I think Howe will know that there's issues on that left-hand side, but Burn is a defender first and foremost, and we are going to have to defend well in this game.
Another argument for keeping Burn in there as well is that with Haaland being out and Alvarez playing as a false nine, Foden especially likes to cut inside and to get into those central positions. So that'll do as well if you've got Burn being part of a back three and keeping that back line quite tight.
Yeah, be a bit less direct against him, won't it? I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're probably going to have Trippier up against Doku on our right-hand side, so he can deal with anything that he does. But a lot of the time, if he doesn't, and nothing works with him, he ends up cutting back inside. So we'll see. But I reckon we'll stick with Burn.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, Daryl, I'm coming back to you for the middle of the park, but I think it's almost like a forced hand at the minute with the personnel that's available. With Joe Linton being out, we're fully expecting Bruno to keep his place, and then it's Longstaff and Miley. Would you be surprised if it was anything else? Any changes at all to that, or do you think it's just going to be a set middle three like what we normally see, or do you think you'll go a bit more defensive?
I think you're right. I think it would be pretty much the set three that we would expect. The only thing that would probably change that would be an unexpected return to fitness of anybody who's currently out. And as far as we're all aware at the time of recording, there's no chance of that happening whatsoever. And we're also banking on that midfield three being able to put in a full 90-minute shift as well, because we know we haven't got that depth in there just at this moment in time. Unless we get a surprise and we're signing somebody before Saturday turns up, and we can get them registered in time, but we all know that that's very, very unlikely. And if I can just drop back in on the Dan Burn subject at left back, I agree with Andy that I think he will pick Dan Burn. However, the interesting thing to point out is in the last few games that we played against Man City, we've seen the best and the worst of Dan Burn. In the home game last season, he was able to cut out nearly everything that was sent over to Bernardo Silva, who was playing on the right-hand side for Man City on our left that day. He was cutting out everything that, over the top of him with his head and because of his height and everything. And again, earlier this season down at the Etihad, we saw the worst because Phil Foden was coming in from that side and he had him absolutely torn inside and out and ripped to shreds, and it led to the goal in the end because he got absolutely done. Yeah, he got absolutely twisted inside and out at that point. And I think, again, for me, and like I say, I agree with Andy, I think he will pick Dan Burn because he just offers that possibility of cutting out those long ball passes over to that side when Man City are trying to spread play.
Yeah, and obviously we'll stick with you, Daryl, for the attacking three. You know, obviously Isak is probably the only central attacker that we have, so he'll be playing. But do you think there'll be any switch up on the wings at all, or do you think it's going to be Gordon, Miggy, as we've expected, or do you think maybe he changes that up a little bit as well? I mean, Miggy had a great game against Sunderland. I thought personally, probably one of his best games of recent. I don't think you want to kind of knock that form if that's what this is. Obviously, it's only been one game, but you've got to look at it how it is.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be mixing up too much. I think the lads performing the way they did last week is absolutely testament for them to start again on Saturday. Again, when you look at the depth behind that, without Harvey Barnes or Joe Willock to come in and play those positions, we're really short on numbers because we're then having to rely on 60-odd-year-old Matt Ritchie these days, aren't we? And things like that. And the only other possibility would be to bring in Tino Livramento on that side as well. As an option, but again, we haven't really seen that tested as much in these games, so it pretty much picks itself.
So what we will now do, as we always do in these previews, is we'll come to our predictions. Before we come to our predictions, unless anybody wants to add anything before we do that, we'll do this bit first, and then we'll go to the predictions.
We haven't talked about what was our last game out of interest? Did we win? Just thought I'd bring it up.
Oh, I cannot remember. It was against a nobody team anyway. It doesn't matter.
Right, sorry. I don't even have an airport, man.
They don't. They have to come to us. Apparently.
What I will say is Almiron is probably the best metaphor for sort of the way the team's playing of anyone, because obviously we know that our entire game plan is about outrunning the opposition, high press, winning the ball up high to create chances, and Almiron's almost been the lightning rod for that, because so much of his game is based around just winding him up and sending him off on a 90-minute sprint. He's not been able to do that, has he, for so long, and it was good. Obviously, with Sunderland, it's slightly different because the running probably doesn't have to be quite as intense. That's not me even taking the mick. It's just the way it is. But seeing him rob the ball on the edge of the box and lay it off for Isak to score, that was almost a bit of a, we can still do this. How ball isn't over, we can do it. And even though it was against lesser opposition, I think it was a good indicator that we're maybe on the right track. And Joe's mentioned it as well about just getting on the training ground and being able to have. Yeah, well, this is it, and you're on about Plan B as well. It would be nice for Howe to have a break as well, and to think, if we don't have the legs in the tank, is there another way we can play? Because that's maybe been a criticism, and in this game as well, if we get to 50 minutes and it's still 0-0, but we're under the cosh and we're knackered, has Howe had a bit more time now on the training ground to say, do you know what, we can play another defensive midfielder, we can do 4-2-3-1. You might see something mad, like when you try to play Matt Target defensive mid, he might suddenly go, do you know what, Dan Burn would be a great centre forward. You never know, do you? So I think we're in a decent spot for this game, to be honest. It's just a shame that we're having to play these and then Villa, who are the two best teams in the league this year.
Yeah, it is a shame. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if there is a plan B, or we need to resort to that, what that looks like, because that we haven't really had it. There hasn't been anything because personnel's dictated that we can't have that. I mean, there's been some games where we haven't even. I don't like to use the word we haven't been able to make a substitute, because obviously we were able to make substitutes, but the personnel on the bench kind of dictated that you couldn't really bring them on against the opposition we were playing against. What options? There's you look at the bench in the past few games and you just think, oh, that isn't as bad as it has been.
Am I right in saying that we've recalled Isaac Hayden?
I think there's rumours of it,
Only
but I
to
think that's
send him
to
out
send
to
him
another
back to another
club,
club.
I think.
I don't
he
think we'll
going
see
to,
him
like-
feature.
Yeah,
Like the
so-
He'll go to like
Undertaker.
Norwich or something again, or West Brom, someone,
Aye.
someone in the Championship. I don't think
It's
you will
like a new
see him
signing, lads.
a resurgent.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a new signing.
He might come back with a new haircut and be absolutely unreal. You never know.
It's not Andros Townsend. He's not going to do that. Boys, we
That
will
was a new
come.
hairline, not a haircut.
Well, yeah, completely. Yeah, it wasn't a cut, was it? It was a
New
growth.
scalp.
We will come to our predictions now. And Joe, mate, I'm going to come to you because you're the only one wearing a Newcastle top, and that's the only reason I can pick something. So you are going to be our first choice.
Okay.
What's your prediction?
Oh, mate, it's City, isn't it? It's City. They got De Bruyne back and
Sit
Haaland's
there.
back. So we've got to batter them 4-1. No, I'm gonna stick to my guns. What I said at the start of this, I reckon we'll probably lose a 2-1. I reckon we've got a goal in us against these, but I'm expecting, like I say, a much improved performance. I'm expecting intensity levels to be far higher than what they were against the likes of Luton, Forest. Take your pick out of any game in December, really, and we can't I think winning against the Macrams as well did definitely help morale, not just with the team but with the fan base as well. Like, I think if I'd lost against Sunderland and then lost against these, everyone would have completely lost their heads, complete meltdown. But I think with the weekend gone, people will probably be a lot more accepting of the fact that it's City and that they're a really good team. And whilst we're a really good team and we are mint, we're still finding our levels of eliteness that we, had last season. So I reckon we'll probably lose this one, not by a lot, but we'll give it a good shot, and who knows, anything can happen. It's football.
It is football. I mean, I'm not expecting a team photo on the pitch again this week, but yeah, I'll give my prediction next for a change. I'm sick of going last. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. I think we've proven that when we're at home, when we've got our tails up, which we will have, we can beat anyone. And I'm not saying we're going to beat City because I've just said it's going to be 2-2, but I think get the crowd behind it. It's a 5:30 kickoff on a Saturday. It always helps. We always seem to perform well on those fixtures, especially at home. Like I've said, we've shown last season we can score against this team. We can score 3 against this team in some games. And I just think it's going to be another one of those classics where it's end to end, where it's going to be horrible to watch. But yeah, I'll go for a 2-2 draw for this game. Yeah, I would snap your hand off for it. I'll take 0-0.
Absolutely.
But I think it'll be goals, so I'm going to go 2-2. Andy, mate, what is your prediction for this one?
Pass. No. Well, I had some more stats, which is that we on about our away form. Man City are technically the best away team in the league, despite their quote-unquote troubles. And they also have never dropped points in the first league game of a calendar year since 2012. And that was when they lost to Sunderland in 2012, which I think was the game that G scored when he went round the goalkeeper. If you remember that game. Which, to be fair, Sunderland, great game.
I do, I remember watching that.
I'd like to think similar to you, Scott, that it might be a repetition of the home game we had. Was it last year when it was 3-3, where it was just end to end, everyone was behind the team. I just don't know. I know it's a stupid thing to say. I think there'll be goals in it. I think both teams to score, and one team's got to edge it. And I think with what Man City have got off the bench, I think they might just have too much for us. But I'm not going to be a complete negative Nelly. I'm going to agree with you and say 2-2. But we will equalise, so it will feel like a point gained rather than a point lost.
Do you know, you mentioned record, that record there. Do you know what records are there for, Andy? They're there to be broken. So let's break that record. Daryl, mate, your prediction for the weekend.
Right. So, again, I'm going to agree with Joe. And I have to go into a little bit of a stat here and look at our record against Man City at St James's Park in the Premier League era, because, of course, as we all know, football wasn't invented before 1992. And we've played 23 times in the Premier League era at St James's at home to Man City. Won 7, drawn 5, lost 11. And I think 6 of those 7 came before the money came into Man City in 2006. So it shows you it doesn't happen very often and how far apart these things are. So for me, it's going to be a 2-1 defeat, unfortunately. But like Joe said, I also think it'll be a much improved performance.
Well, to flip that around, Daryl, on the stats, since our takeover, we're unbeaten against Man City at home, aren't we? beat them once, drew with them.
Very true.
So let's not break that record. So I'm going to
actually no one said
a
win. Small sample pool you've got there, Andy. But
I'm changing my prediction 2-1. We can't have no one say we're going to win. So winning 2-1. There you go.
2-1. There you go.
Clip it.
Well, right, what do you think the score's going to be? Let us know in the comments below. If there's anything that you agree with or you don't agree with, also let us know in the comments below. Who would you pick for this one? Again, let us know below in the comments. If you've liked this video, scroll down from it and hit the little thumbs up button. It helps get this video into the feeds of other Newcastle fans and even Man City fans. And if you are a Man City fan watching and you think we're talking a load of codswallop, again, in the comments below, let us know. We embrace all interaction on this channel. Whilst you are down there hitting that thumbs up button, if you hit the subscribe button as well, you'll get more of our videos appearing on your YouTube feed. And if you want to know when those videos go live, hit the notification bell and you will get a notification on your device of choice when we go when new content hits the channel. If you want to go one step further, we do have a membership program. It's $2.99 or $4.99 a month, and that gets you early access to videos like this very video right here, as well as access to the Telegram group, the Discord server, and other exclusive content that is available just for members on this YouTube channel. And finally, if you're listening on the audio, whether it's on iTunes or Spotify or Google Podcasts or whatever your podcast consumption app of choice is, if you give us a 5-star rating, that helps us get up those rankings. I think we're around the 24, 25 at the minute for sports podcasts. So get us up there a little bit higher with a 5-star rating. And that's all that we ask. Boys, I'm looking forward to this one. It's going to be the last game before a couple of weeks off, although I think the Fulham game drops in there now, so it's not as long as we were going to have. But yeah, I know I never look forward to international breaks or breaks in the football, but I think we need this one. I think this break is long overdue for some of the lads there.
Yes, please.
Thanks everybody for watching. Boys, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Andy. And thanks, Daryl.
Thank you, Scott.
It's always a pleasure. We will see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.